Those are just mine on the landing page. Anything I missed there, Mustafa? Anything that you like to see when you're designing or browsing any travel websites?
No, I remember a while back I did a training course on Skillshare, and I was analyzing, like trying to explain like mobile experiences versus desktop experiences, and so I was looking at, say, Virgin Atlantic, and I know this is more the stuff that you're talking about specifically to travel sites rather than airline sites, which I can see airline sites have got an element of this where they'll incorporate hotels and other stuff. But what I liked about when you looked at the desktop site versus the mobile site always seemed to be their minimal viable product just due to real estate that you can see on the screen. But I always found the mobile sites, when it comes to searching for stuff or focusing on the specific task, much more easier to use. The desktop sites often have a lot of clutter because they're trying to fill the space rather than focusing on the key thing of like finding a date, finding a price point, maybe inspired by a location that you didn't consider, but it's within a price point, but really getting you to the core part of the experience. So I think it's always about focusing on the key action that you're trying to get someone to do. So I always find like the mobile sites, so looking at airline sites, which they have to optimize a lot, so British Airways one or perhaps Virgin Atlantic, as like just what is the minimal thing on the screen.
Right.
And I think with travel sites, there's certain user personas, right? You have the user persona of someone who wants to book a holiday for family and kids, right? So their time slot is important,
Right.
and in that. Then you've got folks who they're a bit more freer with when they can go, but their focus is like budget, right? And then you've got, I suppose, in search we have like I'm feeling lucky, maybe even just doing that kind of thing where someone's like they're not really sure, give them inspirational stuff. So I think exploring those three buckets and seeing that those three user types are very, very distinct. So it's not so much a user persona, but more like user scenario. So like this is like the common things which people go into.
Yeah, I tend to think of it just on that point as like you're coming on the site, you're going for different users. I think it typically goes discover, getting additional details, so you're learning, and then you're ultimately converting. But the discovery piece is becoming more and more important and as a differentiator, because sometimes when you're traveling, especially now that everything's reopening, the narrative of being able to go anywhere in the world is not necessarily the case right now. So people are actually looking more locally, like where can I go within region, within state, so that's the current mindset. But I think that's a really good point.
And also, I mean, it's like, because it's like where the difference between UX design and service design. UX design is within the context of the thing that you're designing. Service design is looking at the entire experience from the point you actually join. So we were looking at user journey mapping. I think one of the episodes that we recorded last week where we're looking at stories of user journey mapping, what user journey mapping is, and what it isn't. And that kind of ties to service design, where the moment someone engages with your brand or your product, and so where the service design can help, especially with airlines, is like if someone has the ability to subscribe to last minute deals, or like like more inspiration, like you really want to visit this place, when is it open, can you send me a ping? So then you get emails or text messages or the equivalent. And so having the ability for like re-engagement points, but letting the user control at what point they do, I think is really important. The other thing I think, which came up with more specifically travel, like airline sites, because that's the ones which I know a bit more about, was like dark patterns. So checkboxes already selected or unselected, which would get people to buy insurance when they were not sure that they were actually buying it. Like these things you want to kind of avoid, because users are well, firstly, there's like it's unethical, right? Secondly, it's like users are much more savvy, and if to try and get the extra $15 that you're going to get from doing that, can have a huge damage to your actual brand long term, and will lose repeat custom. And people remember bad experiences, and they'll say, "Yeah, don't go to them. They do this thing." And I already had insurance, and they made me buy insurance. And like to avoid stuff like that, or at least if your stakeholders are saying, "No, we need to do these things," just make it really clear that it's not worth the long term.
So one alternative to that dark pattern, which I think is a really good point. So obviously not having that check by default is great. Keeping the messaging super simple. And then the thing I like of late is insurance companies are adding value props. Like 15,000 people have booked this in the last, or used this in the last 24 hours to save X amount of money. You know what I mean? They're making it some sort of statistics or data points to make you feel more comfortable for paying $15.
Yeah.
Which,
I mean, if